Hi guys, at the time of the recording of this, it wasn't clear if the man who had thrown an object at Nigel Farage's bus was politically motivated or somebody suffering from a mental illness. This is now the second time something has been launched at the head of the Reform UK party. The incident was being discussed on Newsnight, where the former mayor of Bristol made a very eloquent point about certain politicians trying to whip up anger against minorities who then find themselves on the receiving ends of attacks. He was making a very valid addition to the discussion when Boris Johnson's sister Rachel butted in.
Bristol is a city of 42 square miles. People from all different backgrounds live there. The number of times I've looked at the way national politicians have framed national debates and international debates in a way that does not help our ability to create a space in which people live together. This stuff does cut feedback in a feedback loop. So what I'm not doing is justifying what happened, but we're saying you have to take some responsibility.
You were licensing violent protests, which constitute criminal assault. And for me, who worries every single day about members of my family being attacked because they were in politics, I'm really sad to hear you talk like that.
That's a total misunderstanding. What I'm doing is a total misunderstanding. And that's why I said I want to say this very carefully. What I'm not doing is licensing what happened at all. What I am saying is, if we want to understand what went on, we have to look at all the things that led up to it, including the creative
rather than about the actual
and that's what intelligent politics does. It looks at context.
She doesn't, but she's not interested in the context. This is absolutely ridiculous. So there's so many questions to ask here. Why the heck is Rachel Johnson on this panel? I've asked this question before. Does she exist as a commentator simply because she's Boris Johnson's sister? Or does she actually have anything valid to add? Because it seems to be the case that she's on panels, she's invited on the BBC, she has her own show, because she is Boris Johnson's sister. Now, she also mentioned how she's constantly afraid that members of her family could be attacked on a daily basis. Who? Boris Johnson? And she also added, because they're in politics or because they were in politics. She honestly thinks that people are going to attack Boris Johnson because he was in politics. Now, I haven't heard of any attacks on Boris Johnson, but if there were attacks on Boris Johnson, would it be because he was in politics, or would it be because of, I don't know, policies that he supported when he was both an MP, Foreign Secretary and a Prime Minister? Like when he ignored the pandemic at the beginning. People would be upset about that. I'm not saying that they should attack him, of course not. No one would justify that. What about austerity? He was a supporter of austerity. Many people died because of austerity. Many people would be upset about that. Is that a justification? Of course it's not. So, what is she talking about? And also the point here about context. There are people like Nigel Farage, not just him but others, mainly in the Conservative Party, who will use rhetoric in order to reach out to a certain demographic in society. People who are more inclined now at the moment to vote for Reform UK. And they realize that, well, we have to double down on this toxic rhetoric. We have to become even more toxic than Reform UK in order to win these people back. And when you start down that road, there are terrible consequences. Now, Nigel Farage was hit with a milkshake last week. It seems his bus was hit by something. We still don't know yet what it is. In neither case is it justified. But what has Nigel Farage done in order for people to react in this way? Like, we don't see it happen to every other politician. Why is it happening to Nigel Farage? What is the context here? What has Nigel Farage been doing since he's entered politics that has resulted in people reacting this way? Once again, this is not a justification, and no reasonable person will justify what happened. But we have to understand the context. What has the right-wing politicians like Boris Johnson, like Nigel Farage, like members of the Conservative Party, what have they been saying over the last number of years about minorities, about asylum seekers coming in, describing them as illegal migrants, talking about how they're crossing the channel illegally, using this type of rhetoric, talking about invasions, talking about military-age young men, stuff like that, how they're more interested in committing crimes than actually working, or they're not really asylum seekers, even though so few have been processed. What do you think that language does to a society? And when many people become upset about you using that type of language, how are they supposed to vent that anger? Now, we would hope that they would use democratic means, vote these people out. But many people feel disenfranchised. They feel that, if there's an MP in a safe seat, there's nothing I can do. Once again, this is not a justification, but we have to try and understand what motivates these people in order to stop it from happening in the future. But instead, people like Rachel Johnson don't want to talk about context. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.